This is the Mettle podcast, and I am your host, Coach Thomann. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mettle podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome.
Parents, is your athlete ready for the upcoming sports season? They might have the strength, the speed, and the skills, but without confidence, they could still struggle when the game is online. Skill and strength are great. They're necessary, but they're not used to their full potential without the right mentality. Confidence is key. It's the key to unlocking that full potential. And at Mettle Coaching, I offer personalized sessions designed to build the confidence your athlete needs for a successful season. My proven techniques empower them to perform under pressure, both on the field and in life. Don't let a lack of confidence hold them back. Book a free session today and discover the power of confidence. Visit the website and get started on the journey to a more confident and successful athlete with Mettle Coaching.
All right, parents, coaches, what is your least favorite body language to see in your athlete? The one that really, drives you nuts, you think is a really terrible example? Is it the palms up? Is it the shaking the head? Is it the shoulders slumped? We see it. We see it in kids. We know they do it. And we try to get them out of that and tell them not to do that and let them know that's not a good idea. And what we're going to get into today on the Mettle podcast, and how you doing? I'm Coach Thomann. What we're going to get in today is a little bit about why we should care about that. And I think we already do care about that, but I'm going to give you a little bit more insight on mentality, the body, and the connection between those and why we should care about it a little bit more, and not just when I mentioned it, that it drives us nuts. Like, we're going to do what I do on this podcast. It's not just about complaining about the situation, but what we can do about it. So we're really going to talk, and it's not just body language. I think body language is just an easy way for us to see it. And the reason, whether we know it or not, I think some of the reasons that we really hate seeing that body language in kids is it's got a strong connection to what we've been talking about in the last couple episodes. So this is part 3 of a series I'm doing that is geared mostly for parents on how to help their athlete become a little bit more mentally tough. And episode 1 was how to focus your praise to make sure that your praise is focusing on controllables for an athlete. And anytime we see bad body language in an athlete, a lot of times it lets us know that they're focusing on something that they can't control, because that, the palms up, the head down, those are indicators that an individual is very resigned to the situation. Like, there's nothing I can do. It's very most of that body language is an apathetic feeling. That apathy comes from not believing that you can change something. So it's a very good indicator. That bad body language is a good indicator that they're focusing on things they can't control, which is, check out episode 1 if you want to know about why that's such a problem and why we have to adjust that and, make changes towards that. That's one. The other one, we know that we see that negative body language, and it would be really easy for us to start putting in captions of the thoughts that are going through their head. So we know with that negative body language comes a negative voice. And that was episode 2. If you haven't heard episode 1 or episode 2, I suggest you go back, because episode 2 was on the negative voice and just how how harmful the negative voice can be for an athlete or for a parent or for any individual, and why that idea of being really hard on yourself and operating in a negative voice is not okay, and why a positive voice is better. So yeah, so I think that when we see the negative body language, subconsciously or whether we're thinking about it or not, we understand the mindset of the kid. We know that it is a physical representation of a bad mindset. And a lot of times that bad mindset is focused on the uncontrollables and using a negative voice. So we know that that's an issue and we want to do something about it. And also we know that just from watching athletes play and watching sports, and we know that they don't play as well. So even if we have a very, our mindset is very much focused just on them winning the game, and we should always want to compete to try to win. We know that they're not doing their best, and they have less chance to win if they're with that bad body language. It's very connected with that. So we see that bad body language. We tell our kids, we tell our athletes, don't use that bad body language. One of the issues that I have with it is we don't really help them out of it. And then we're going to talk about that today, some of the ways that we can get out of that, more than just say, don't do this. Right? I think we tend to do that. Don't have that bad body language. And I think that we need to find a way to help kids get out of that. And also, the other thing we're going to talk about on this podcast is why it goes well beyond whether or not they're winning and losing games. Bad body language and negative physical feelings, the feelings that we have in our body, that can lead to it's unhealthy, and it has some real long-term issues and some long-term negative consequences in our health. And a term that you're going to hear me use that you might know, you may not, is the idea of embodiment. And embodiment is just that physical representation of a negative feeling. So when we talk about focusing on things we can't control or having that negative voice in our head, how does that come out in our body? And that's embodiment. And it's not just bad body language. Some people are better at controlling the bad body language than others, and it's not just athletes. We do it as adults. Everybody does it. So, embodiment is as simple as the idea of, let's say you have to stand up and give a speech in front of a group of people. It's very often that we're going to feel butterflies in the stomach. A lot of times we have terms that go with it. We get really nervous. We might call it jelly legs, or we have too much stress and it feels like we have a weight on our shoulder. These are terms that we have to describe embodiment, this connection we have between our thoughts and our body. And it's real. It's not something we're trying to control, but a lot of times the feeling we have in our body is a really good indicator of what's going on in our mind. So we've talked about episode 1, we talked a lot about neural pathways and how important that is. And what we're trying to do is use neuroplasticity, the ability to change those neural pathways. So the example there is, I could tell you if you're in a crowd of people and the presenter just said, hey, I'm going to pick a volunteer and I want you to stand up here and answer questions for me, right? A lot of people that get really nervous in those situations, the second, say the presenter, they might not even point at you. They might just say, hey, we're going to pick a volunteer. And you're just like, oh my gosh, it's not me. I hope it's not me. Hope it's not me. The second you realize it's a possibility, you start feeling that internal feelings. You get that nervousness in your stomach. It could feel, some people, it's different. Different people. It might be the butterflies in your stomach. It might be the jelly legs. You might start shaking. That's because you have this pathway in your brain about you're nervous about speaking, and it's real, and it's okay that you're like that. But if it it's a pathway that's well developed. It takes no time for you to go from being told you're going to have to stand up here and answer questions. You go to, oh boy, what if I look like an idiot? What if I say the wrong thing? People are going to laugh at me. People are going to make fun of me. I'm going to look stupid. And you get nervous about how you're going to come across and how you're going to look. And that happens in seconds, absolutely in seconds, just from somebody even suggesting that you might have to stand up here and do that. That's a very well-developed neural pathway that you have, and it's very connected to the body, and your body can immediately start having reactions. It could be that, it's affecting your nervous system. It can make your pulse get up, your blood pressure can get up, your digestion can change, all these things. It's a real thing. Embodiment is real, but we don't, as a culture, as people, whatever, we don't really pay attention to it like we should. And when I'm talking about these long-term health effects, and we're going to get into this a little bit, let's say that you are in a situation. Now, how often are you going to be in a presentation where somebody's picking somebody to speak and you get nervous? But you could be going into work every day or in a relationship that's making you feel not the best. It's making you feel these negative emotions in your body. If you're going into work every day nervous and kind of feeling sick, or you're feeling the stress in your shoulders and stuff like that, when you feel those things, those are real physical feelings. If you feel those long enough, they can become long-term physical health issues. Enough feeling butterflies in your stomach, and that's an area you feel it. You feel it in your stomach. You feel it in your bowels a little bit. If you can feel emotions like that long enough, that can become problems with digestion. You can get ulcers. You don't digest as well, and that's not good. And the tight shoulders that you have, that you feel in stressful situations, can become stress headaches and cause migraines. And these things can start to build on each other. So if we're not addressing or recognizing these emotions and how they affect our bodies, it can have long-term health effects. And I know we're talking about athletes here and things like that, but I'm making some points here for you to understand why it's so important for athletes, for your kid. But as I'm episode 1, episode 2, and every time you do this, I'm talking to parents here. If you want to be able to help your kid, you got to help yourself first. That idea of the way I talk to parents about things, working with their kids, becoming more mentally tough, and I make these suggestions. What do they tell you when you're on the airplane? The thing that you skip whenever the flight attendants are talking and telling you pay attention. What do they tell you to do if the oxygen masks come down? Which that's never happened while I'm on the phone. I would freak out, or when I'm on a plane, but that would freak me out if it happened. If the masks ever come down, they always talk about it. But what do they tell you to do when the masks come down? If you're traveling with a kid, what do? You put on yours first, then you help your kid, because it's no good for you to you can't help it doesn't help your kid if you just pass out and die. So you have to take care of yourself, then you can help your kid, and then they'll be okay. So it's the same idea with all these exercises that I give for parents. I want you to do these exercises. I want you to have this recognition about yourself so that you can learn how to use these things and help your kid better. But anyway, when I'm talking about all these emotions and these feelings, I want you to be able to do this for yourself. And it goes beyond just feeling nervous in situations. Our mental, our emotions, and our stressors that affect how we think, if we do that long enough, or that happened to us enough when we were a kid, it can have real serious long-term health damage. There's some new research that's really cool. It's also very frightening. A lot of the research is done by this woman called Nadine Burke Harris. If you ever want to read a really cool book, the deepest wells. She's talking about long-term effects of childhood trauma and adversity. And we're talking about athletics. We're talking about adversity. It just what she's talking about is a little bit deeper, a little bit more stressful situations. But a lot of times, anytime we're talking about something, it's good to look at the extreme examples. But what she talks about is things called ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences. And they talk about the more adversity a kid goes through, the more damage it has long term. So I got a quote here from her, which is, again, frightening. But she said, 20 years of medical research has shown that childhood adversity literally gets under our skin, changing the way people the way it endures their bodies for decades. It can tip a child's developmental trajectory, affect physiology. It can trigger chronic inflammation and hormonal changes that can last a lifetime. It can alter the way our DNA is read and how cells replicate. And it can dramatically increase the risk for heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, and even Alzheimer's. Let me break that down. The more adversity you had as a child, so these kids that grow up in difficult homes, and it's a compounding effect. So most people have had some. The more you have, the more it is. But the more adversity you had as a kid and trauma, the more likely you are to die early of heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, these things. It's well connected anymore.
Coaches, do you dream of guiding mentally tough athletes towards a championship? Kids that are resilient, persistent, and unshaken by setbacks. Well, in today's world, those athletes aren't born. They have to be developed. Many athletes face significant challenges and risk burnout. So how do we foster that mental toughness without overwhelming them? Well, introducing the Ember to Inferno program, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. This series is designed specifically for coaches, offering a deep dive into your own journey of mental toughness and equipping you with practical tools to build confidence and belief in your athletes. Rather than just simply adding more adversity to their life, we focus on creating a strong foundation for mental resilience. You'll learn how to transform a spark of motivation into a blazing fire of toughness using techniques that address challenges like social media pressures, athletic stress, and trauma. Don't just wish for mentally tough athletes, build them. Join the Ember to Inferno program today and ignite the potential in your athletes. For more information, contact me, Coach Thomann, at Mettle Coaching.
Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, you have to forge your mettle. And if you listen to the Mental Mettle podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Mettle podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your mettle.
And again, we're not talking about, well, sometimes we are. Sometimes we put kids in really, really difficult situations as athletics, and it's not necessary, right? I agree. Athletics should be adversity, but we got to give them ways to deal with that adversity, or that adversity is going to turn into stress, trauma, and things like that. And we really have to be aware of how our bodies are handling that stress. Stress, adversity is a given. How we're handling it is what we can do about it. We have to learn. So I'm not going to geek out too much, but we kind of break our, when we're having stress, we're having our nervous system down into two categories, either the parasympathetic or the sympathetic. And parasympathetic is what we call rest and digest. You're chilling, you're being nice and calm. Your food's, digesting. Your blood pressure's down. Your heart rate's down. Everything's kind of like nice and calm. The opposite, the sympathetic, is flight or flight, right? So fight or flight, we know what that is. That's the adrenaline jump. That shuts down. That takes your blood pressure up, takes your heart rate up, shuts down digestion, gets the blood where it needs to go or where you think it needs to go. That fight or flight is, if you're walking down the road and you think, a mass murderer is chasing you, we need that. But we need that at times when there's a mass murderer chasing us, but we don't need it all the time. And when we are in that fight or flight, that sympathetic all the time, it starts to have serious effects, especially when you compound it over years. So if you're constantly feeling these these negative body emotions, like the butterflies in the stomach or the tight shoulders, or, just feeling like the world, the weight of the world's on your shoulders and things like that, you're constantly in this fight or flight more than you should be. And it has some serious long-term issues, some problems. So much so. And again, I told you I wouldn't geek out too much, but I did used to be a high school science teacher. So I'm going to bring you back to your high school science days. And I know that we've all done this because I used to teach freshman biology. So I know that you were supposed to have done it. But anytime we're doing that mitosis, do you guys remember doing the anaphase, telophase, and you take the cells, and it's about cells dividing, right? And in order for a cell to divide, the DNA, the chromosomes, we need chromosomes in every cell, right? So the chromosomes have to double, and then they get pulled apart, and then they split. And might remember those pictures. It's like a circle, and then it pinches, and then suddenly it pinches, and then you get two, right? Well, there's structures in there called telomeres, and telomeres are these long lines that pull the DNA, right? And I trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. There are these structures, these telomeres that pull the DNA, and they're essential for us to be able to divide our cells. Why do we need to divide our cells? Well, kids need it to grow, but even as adults that we're done growing, we need it to heal, right? So we're constantly making new cells. We damage cells. We need these new cells, and we need mitosis to do that. And mitosis needs these telomeres to be able to do that. Well, what they've shown is that if you're constantly in the fight or flight, and you're constantly in that sympathetic, if you're constantly in these negative embodiments in your body, your telomeres start to get shorter and shorter and shorter, meaning that you don't heal as well, kids don't grow as well, which is why they can connect the trauma, which shortens the telomeres, to some long-term health issues of like heart disease, stroke, cancer, things like that. So it's a long road to get there, but it's a well-connected road. It's understandable. And it also, if you remember, not just mitosis, but meiosis. Meiosis is creating the sex cells. So the egg cells, the sperm cells, things like that, does the same thing. It shortens those telomeres, which means if you are under constant stress and your telomeres are shortened and you procreate, and you have a child from before they're even out of the womb, you have kids that have shortened telomeres. And these shortened telomeres means they don't grow like they should, and they don't grow as well. So we're not even from birth. We're talking about from conception. You're starting with an individual, a human that has shortened telomeres and doesn't heal like they should, doesn't grow like they should. So this is where the idea of, and I get into more about generational stress and how stress can affect entire families over multiple generations. So I know feels like it's a long stretch for me starting this podcast on just body language, but I'm telling you, what I'm trying to tell you is that we really need to honor the connection between our negative thoughts and our negative feelings in our body. I'm not saying we can get rid of them, okay? Because you're going to be nervous in situations. You're going to get scared in situations. You're going to feel it. But I think we need to do a better job of honoring it and not just being, just like on the last episode, I talked about how people just accept a negative voice. We don't have to, I think we don't have to accept all these negative responses to stressors in our lives. We've got to find ways to lessen that. And one of the first things that we need to be able to do is before, again, I talked about this in the last few episodes, before we can address a problem, we have to recognize a problem. So we need to recognize these feelings in our body. And I've been talking about them, calling them negative feelings. But what I'm going to tell you right now is, in order to really address them and recognize them, we kind of got to get away from the negative and positive. Because again, if you're getting chased by a negative or by a mass murderer down the street, that's probably, I wouldn't call that a negative emotion, right? We need that fight or flight. So it's not all bad. And if you're going into, your kid's going to go play a big game, they're going to be nervous, right? It's okay. If you're going to get up and give a speech or have to go into a really stressful time at work, it's normal. You're going to feel some stress. But we need to do a better job of honoring that connection, describing that connection, and understand what's going on, okay? One of the hardest things for people to do is be able to look at their emotions in a judgment-free way. So you start to notice, hey, whenever like your kid, hey, I'm going up to the free throw line, I get really nervous, my legs get shaky. All right. If we use judgment in that situation, you're going to be like, quit being a baby. Don't do that. That's a terrible thing. We shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be scared. You should want to do that. And we got to be careful how we say things like that, right? Because we're putting judgment on it. But it's a very natural thing. Why are they nervous? Because they want to win the game. That's a good thing. They have their motivations in the right place. Of course, they're going to be nervous. But it's better if we judge acknowledgement without judgment and say, like, hey, I'm nervous going up to free throw line, and say, yeah, that's normal, right? Because I want to win. That's okay. That's my body preparing for it and being okay with it. And acknowledging it without that judgment can really help us start to understand our body and understand our emotions a little bit better, because the emotions are real, right? What we're trying to when we're trying to get out of this, it's real, right? So we got to learn to be able to do that. And it's difficult to acknowledge our embodiment and our thoughts without passing judgment, but it's difficult, but it's something we need to practice. One of the ways, and we're going to get into some ways that you can practice this stuff, but one of the ways, if you wanted to start doing some meditation with your kid, there's all sorts of meditations you can do online. One of them I love is called a body scan. And what a body scan is, it's a meditation in which somebody would lead, and you can do it on your own, but I like the ones that get led by a meditation expert. And it's about laying down, calming down, and then thinking in order. You might go start from the top of your head to your forehead, down to your nose, down to your face, down to your shoulders, arms, chest, torso, so on and so forth, down your legs. And like, as you breathe, think about that breath coming into every individual part of your body and recognizing the feelings that you have, the embodiment that you have in each body part without judgment, right? So noticing the tightness in your shoulder, right? Noticing how your legs are very tired, or how your head is tight, things like that. Noticing it without judgment. And that's hard to do, but it takes a little practice to get into that. A body scan is a great way to be able to start to get better in tune in your body and how emotions are kind of like stockpiling up in your body. And that's a good start for embodiment, but I'm going to get into some more later. But just a little bit more on why practicing embodiment is so important. I talked a little bit about what Nadine Burke-Harris talks about, the trauma and the telomeres and things like that. So the opposite is, we have these, they've had a link to these issues in our body if we don't handle stress correctly. They've also done and I say they here because there's just like last week I was talking about the voices. There's so much research out there on why practicing embodiment, breathwork, mindfulness, because that's what we're talking about here, all the benefits from practicing that. I'm going to give you just a list of some things that I compiled from different research, different places, and they talk about why focusing on embodiment and breath work is so useful and what it can do for us. So for the cardiovascular system, it lowers blood pressure, reduces heart rate, improves circulation, good things. Nervous system, reduces stress response, promotes relaxation, improves neuroplasticity. So it's like, as you practice neuroplasticity about changing your mindset, you actually get better at changing your mindset. So it's like, it's this compounding effect that you get better at it the more you practice it, which is the way things work. The respiratory, you get better lung capacity and efficiency. All right. And reduces symptoms of things like asthma. Very good things for athletes to be better at. Endocrine system, it lowers your cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and it balances the rest of your hormones as well. Your immune system, it boosts your immune function, it reduces inflammation. Good things for everyone and for athletes. Digestive, it improves digestion and nutrient absorption, easy for me to say, and some other disorders like IBS get decreased. The muscles, it reduces muscle tension and pain and better flexibility and range of motion. Like these are us practicing embodiment gets our body better. It improves memory, cognition function. It reduces anxiety and depression, makes you sleep better, increases pain tolerance, right? There's so many benefits for everyone, but really for athletes practicing the embodiment. It's just this long list of things. And when we go back to when Nadine Burke-Harris was talking about the trauma and how this trauma shortens your telomeres and makes you die sooner, it's not permanent. You can undo these damages and you can heal and lengthen your telomeres. And the way that she says, there's 6 ways that she talks about helping them. More sleep, that's good. Improving your mental health, which is we're all about that. Fostering healthy relationships, that's good. Exercise, so your athletes has the exercise, that's good. The nutrition, eating the right way helps. And the last one's mindfulness. And that's kind of what we're talking about here with this embodiment and that mindfulness. If you want to start to heal the body and some of these effects of stress, we have to practice mindfulness. It's noticing how stress affects your body and then using mindfulness techniques to help you heal that. So it's a really important part. We want to honor the connection, honor that embodiment, realize that it's real. Start to recognize how embodiment is affecting us, how these negative stressors are showing up in our body, and then able to change that and lessen some of those problems. We need to practice mindfulness techniques because I've said this all the time. I am not like this embodiment, these negative emotions and feelings in our body come from stress and come from adversity. Removing the stress and the adversity is not an option, right? You can't just take your kid or your athletes and remove all the obstacles from them. That is not what we're about. That's not what we're trying to do. If you are about that and you're trying to make things easier for your kids, well, you're going to have a hard time. Your kids are going to have a hard time. You're going to have a hard time, but maybe athletics aren't for you, right? Because that's what athletics is. Athletics is adversity. It's going to be there. We should want it to be hard, right? But the trick is not to remove that adversity, which is impossible. The trick is how to handle that adversity, how to vent some of that stress and accept that and use it. And that's what we're about right now. So some of the mindfulness techniques, there's a couple different ways we're going to talk about. I'm going to give you some examples here. We're going to do a couple techniques that I use with athletes all the time because I think it's extremely important for them for the reasons that I talked about. Long-term health, sure, but you're going to find that if a kid, where we started with, if a kid is showing that negative body language, we know that they don't win as often. They make mistakes. They get upset. You miss one shot, then it's two shots, then three shots. You get upset about a strikeout, and then it's two strikeouts, three strikeouts, right? So it has long-term. So this mindfulness stuff that we're talking about, and these breathing techniques, has long-term benefits for your health, for everyone, not just athletes, but we know that they have short-term benefits as well, right? You can learn to practice these mindfulness and breathing techniques in the short term to help you succeed in the moment. So it has long-term and short-term benefits. So we're going to get into some of these right now, and I'm going to just go through some of them with you. And you can, if you're in a moment, in a place you can do this, I want you to do them with them just so you can hear about them and learn about them. So the first one I'm going to talk about, we're going to do a couple breathing techniques. Now, I didn't come up with these breathing techniques. Don't think that I do. I steal stuff all the time. I'm not the expert bringing the research and creating this research and creating these techniques. My expertise comes with working with the athletes and how to apply them in the situations and helping them understand why it's important. So here's some of them that I want to do. The first one is called square breathing or 4-box breathing. It's got a couple different names, and it's super easy. It's one of my favorites for that breath work and just getting you to calm down and breathe. And it's called square breathing because you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold it for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, and you hold it for 4 seconds, and then you repeat that like 2, 3, 4, 5 times, whatever you kind of have time for, what you want. I'm going to go through it twice here for you, just so you know what it sounds like and what it feels like. And if you're listening along, I'd love you to close your eyes and just do it with me. If you're driving down the road, obviously don't do that, but you can still breathe here. So we're going to go through a couple rounds of square breathing. So again, if you're there, close your eyes and we'll get going. Okay, here we go. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. That's it. We just did it twice. I would suggest more, but that didn't take you long. And
parents, is your athlete ready for the upcoming sports season? They might have the strength, the speed, and the skills, but without confidence, they could still struggle when the game is online. Skill and strength are great. They're necessary, but they're not used to their full potential without the right mentality. Confidence is key. It's the key to unlocking that full potential. And at Mental Mettle Coaching, I offer personalized sessions designed to build the confidence your athlete needs for a successful season. My proven techniques empower them to perform under pressure, both on the field and in life. Don't let a lack of confidence hold them back. Book a free session today and discover the power of confidence. Visit the website and get started on the journey to a more confident and successful athlete with Mental Mettle Coaching.
I'm talking about this when we talk about these breathing techniques and the benefits that long list of breathing techniques. That's what I'm talking about, is exercises like this. You might want to do it more than just one round, but the payoff for what you get out of this and exercise like this is it seems like an easy payoff, but the trick is you got to keep doing it. So that's square breathing. Then there's another one called 4-7-8, which does the same thing. And you breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. This is like if you're in a situation where you're actually experiencing pain, this is a really good one. They've done some of the studies on this one that it actually increases your pain tolerance and helps you. So that's at 4-7-8 is a really good one. If you've got an injury and something's hurting and you're trying to do that, this can really help one. Another one that I love is called the double inhale. All right. So we're going to do this one real quick. It's a really short one and it's really cool. So I want you to take a deep breath, as big as you can get. Just breathe it in, and hold. And now breathe in again. And now exhale. And I do that a couple times. And I like this breathing exercise for a couple of reasons. One, there's some physiology there, and that it's like you're inhaling and expanding your lungs as far as they can go. Then you pause, and then you bring in a little bit more, and you kind of expand it and fill it out even a little bit more, and add more oxygen to the spots that don't always get it. And there's something there. But then I also like the idea of giving us the idea that we always have a little bit more, right? We always have a little bit more. And I like that double inhale. It's a good one. That's some breathing techniques. Again, there's more. There's a lot more breathing techniques. I would just suggest go, if you don't like mine, or even if you do like mine, go find some more. Find some breathing techniques. Those are really good exercises. Those are breathing techniques that I do with athletes all the time. And I suggest that, again, you can start doing them by yourself. You can start suggesting them to your athletes. A really good idea. Then there's some mindfulness techniques that I really like. The body scan that I mentioned earlier is a mindfulness technique, but I have a mindfulness technique that I have found that works great for athletes. And when we talk about mindfulness, I think we should take a moment and talk about what mindfulness is and why it's so important. So we talk about, well, what's mindfulness? And it's a buzzword now, but what is mindfulness? Well, mindfulness is thinking about your current situation and only current situation. Being, another good phrase for it is, be where your feet are, right? Mindfulness is very current, which means it's not thinking about the past and it's not thinking about the future, because a lot of times when we get stressed, what we're doing is we're thinking about mistakes I made. We're even thinking about things that what I did wrong, or thinking about things that I'm going to do wrong, right? So we're worried about the past. We're worried about the future. Mindfulness is noticing what's around you and calming down in the moment. And it has so much benefit when we get into that parasympathetic and sympathetic. It gets you out of that fight or flight and into that rest and digest. It helps you do that. And that's really important. Any mindfulness technique, anytime that we feel stressed like that, a mindfulness technique is really good. I'm going to give you my favorite one. My 5-4-3-2-1 is what it's called. So again, we're going to do this. And the reason I'm doing this, I could just put it out there and say, you go find it and do it. But part of what I'm trying to do is show you how quick some of these exercises we are, right? So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and how quickly we can do that. And I call this one the reset button for athletes. And I'll talk about why that's so important here in a minute. So let's do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What I want you to do is I want you to look around the room that you're in, wherever you are, and I want you to notice 5 different things. Really notice a clock, notice a light fixture, notice a plant, and then kind of in your mind, name those 5 things. What are you really noticing? Maybe something specific about them. And now 4. I want you to feel 4 different things without even really moving. You could be feeling your legs against your chair. Could be feeling your shirt against your neck. You could reach out and feel a pin or something like that. But I want you to notice 4 different things you're feeling. And then I want you to listen and hear 3 different things. Could just be my voice, but you could also be, if you're in your car, you could hear the hum of the tires. You could hear the air conditioning. But I want you to hear 3 different things. And then I want you to smell 2 different things. Just could be your laundry detergent, could be your hair, could be something near, could be something just in the air. But notice 2 different things that you smell. And then the last one, of course, is I want you to taste 1 thing. If you have something near, I got my cup of coffee here. Really taste that, notice it, pay attention to it. If you don't have anything near, you can always, I know it's gross, but you can always find something in your teeth, right? You'll always be able to taste what you had last. But that's what it is. It's mindfulness. It's paying attention. That's a taste that is in your mouth that you're not even noticing, that if you look for it and you pay attention to it, it's there. That's what mindfulness is paying attention to our surroundings and our situation. In this mindfulness technique, we're doing it with our senses. We're activating our 5 senses. We're getting us out of our situation or our stressors, and in our current situation, paying attention to it. I really like this exercise for athletes whenever they get really upset, a little bit triggered. If you're a coach or you're a parent or whatever, and you've seen a kid come out of a game, they're really making mistakes, they're really upset. A lot of times we see coaches try to coach them at that moment. They're on the bench after they've just made a mistake. It's not happening. It's not happening. It's not getting through because they are not in a place to be able to take in that information and use that information. They're just not. And it can be such a useful tool to use a mindfulness activity to, again, I call it the reset button. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a great one. And the best part about it for an athlete, I work with athletes that get uptight in a game and they get taken out of a game, or it's in between innings or something like that, is they do 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 on their own, and no one knows they're doing it. So it is a way to be able to practice that mindfulness technique on your own. And you can do shortened versions of it. You can just do the feeling things. You can you can teach your athlete, hey, when I get stressed and I'm focusing on the shots I'm missing and, are we going to lose this game? It's really good to say, hey, I'm going to look at my shoes. What color are my shoes? What do my shoes feel like? What does my uniform feel like? What's it look like? What's it smell like? Right? These mindfulness techniques can be really good to reset where you are in your thought process. And then if we have done the exercises, the other exercises we did in the first one, when we want to focus on the controllables, right? You hit the reset button, you do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you get done, and you'll be like, okay, what was my focus today? Oh, I wanted to focus on this today. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is a reset button, get you out of that, let you refocus on what you want. Really, really good exercise. And these exercise, this breath work and this mindfulness is exactly the way that we want to handle stress in a healthy way that doesn't lead to these long-term negative health effects. So that's what we're looking for. Now, as we get into this, if you're a parent, you're a coach, and you're like, hey, this sounds like a good idea. Coach Thomann, you're really convincing me. I'm stressed all the time. My kid's all stressed all the time. I don't want me or my kid to have heart disease, and I don't want him to have Alzheimer's when I get older because of the stress and all that. I get it. But you're like, but it's weird. It's weird. How do I go tell my kid this? I always address it. And I've had football coaches start doing this with their athletes, and they start every practice with a breathing technique. And he asked me about it, and this one coach I'm thinking about, and he's like, it's going to be awkward, isn't it? And I said, yes, it is. You're going to have people laughing. You're going to have people snickering. They're not going to take it serious, at least at first. That's okay. It's a natural reaction. Just keep doing it. It's that compounding effect that we'll start to notice. The more we do it, the more we'll like it. The kids will like it. It's a great exercise for your athletes. If you're a coach, they've come out of a busy day at school. Their boyfriends around, girlfriends around. They've been doing tests. They've been being all the dumb things that kids do. They're not mindful, right? They're on their social media. A mindfulness technique or a breathing activity to start a practice is a great way to hit a reset button and to recenter them. So it's going to be awkward at first, but even they will start seeing the benefits. And when we talk about starting it at the beginning of a practice, or let's say you want to start doing it at home, some of these techniques, one of the big things I got is people say, well, I don't have time. I don't have time for this. One, I would say, yes, you do. You just don't want to do it. When we're talking about those benefits from breath work that we saw, the body systems and how it affects it, I mean, a lot of that is from doing it 10 minutes a day. You have 10 minutes. You do. You're not prioritizing, and you should prioritize this. If you're prioritizing, scrolling through your phone over breath work, that's a choice. So it's something you need to realize, hey, this is good for me. This is something I need to do. Build it into your schedule. Make it something you do. You say, I get up every morning and do this breath work, and it's part of my schedule, and stack it with a habit. Like,
coaches, do you dream of guiding mentally tough athletes towards a championship? Kids that are resilient, persistent, and unshaken by setbacks. Well, in today's world, those athletes aren't born. They have to be developed. Many athletes face significant challenges and risk burnout. So how do we foster that mental toughness without overwhelming them? Well, introducing the Ember to Inferno program, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. This series is designed specifically for coaches, offering a deep dive into your own journey of mental toughness and equipping you with practical tools to build confidence and belief in your athletes. Rather than just simply adding more adversity to their life, we focus on creating a strong foundation for mental resilience. You'll learn how to transform a spark of motivation into a blazing fire of toughness using techniques that address challenges like social media pressures, athletic stress, and trauma. Don't just wish for mentally tough athletes, build them. Join the Ember to Inferno program today and ignite the potential in your athletes. For more information, contact me, Coach Thomann, at Mettle Coaching.
What I mean by that is it could be whenever I came out from my stroke and I had some medications coming out of that, but I also knew that I needed to start doing some meditation and some breath work. I use this little trick to stack habits, and I'd start gotten hot tamales, the candy, because I love hot tamales. And I would put one in my daily pill container, one in the morning, one in the evening. And that was my meditation medication. And I knew that when I took that hot tamale, I had to go sit down and breathe for 5 to 10 minutes, do a breathwork exercise. That was me, a reminder to do this because I knew it was useful for me, and I knew it was something that was going to help me. It was something that I needed to do. But what I wasn't doing was I wasn't stacking a habit. I needed the reminder, and that reminder was what I needed. It takes a little bit to build a habit. So you got to trick your mind a little bit, and then that's perfectly fine. You got to be able to do that. So find a way to build it into your schedule, put it on an alarm on your phone, something, and just stick to it. And you'll start to see these benefits. And then I want you to start doing that with your kid. If you're a parent here, you're trying to do it, start letting them know why this is important and start practicing. It's going to be weird to practice with them, and you can do it. I get it. Why, if you got a teenage kid and you're like, hey, I want to sit down and do some breathing with it, they're going to find it awkward, but find a way to get them to be doing it and practicing it on a daily basis. It is worth the time and the effort. It will work if you continue to do it. This breathwork stuff, all the exercises I do, I know that if you do it, you will have progress in your mental and physical health. And if you don't do it, you won't. It's like, it's not a magic wand. You have to use it. And when it comes to this breath work and this mindfulness, a couple things. In order for you to get better at it, you have to practice it. You have to get those, those effects, those benefits. You have to practice it. And you're not going to be very good at it at first, especially the mindfulness techniques, the breath work. It's going to be hard for you to stay focused. Don't give up. Don't breathe like 3 days and be like, I'm not seeing any benefits. I'm still stressed. Okay. I tried a unicycle once, right? I wasn't very good at it. I didn't keep practicing it, right? If I wanted to get better at riding a unicycle, and I don't need to be because I don't have the benefits to riding a unicycle, but if I wanted to be better at it, what would I have to do? I'd have to practice it. I'd have to keep practicing it, right? Well, breath work is the same way. If I want to get better at breath work, what do I need to do? I need to practice it. Now, breath work is a whole lot better than riding a unicycle because there's huge benefits. If you want to practice it, you got to keep at it. And also, some of this breath work, as I mentioned, is really useful in the moment. So if a kid is getting really stressed and you realize, hey, I need to be able to take a breath. You're starting to notice these negative emotions in your body. You're starting to feel these stressors, how they're compounding. And you're like, okay, this is the time I need to practice a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or a breathwork exercise. And you're right. That's a great time to notice this negative embodiment. Is you should follow that up with a little bit of breathwork exercise. But if you've ever been really, really upset, really stressed, and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, take a deep breath, a lot of times you just want to punch them and you get really upset. And a lot of times we tell people like this, like, hey, you need to calm down and breathe, right? They don't do it very well because they haven't practiced it. It is a little bit like you got a fire in your kitchen. You're making some greasy cheeseburgers and you get a grease fire. If you don't know where the fire extinguisher is and you've never actually used a fire extinguisher and don't know how to pull the pin and sweep and that, right? You may not be that successful. Breath work is like that. If we want to use it like a fire extinguisher, if we want to use it in the moment, we have to practice it on our own. Practice it, like I said, have those reminders. I'm going to practice some breath work and some mindfulness every morning, every evening. As you get better at it, you'll be able to use it in the moment when you need it. You'll be able to calm down in a stressful situation. That's what we're aiming for. That's what we want. That's what I want you to do as a parent, as a coach for your athletes. Start practicing these breathwork exercises. So if we run it back on what we're supposed to be doing here, just to tie everything in as we're getting towards the end here. One, you have to honor embodiment and understand that it's there, that it's real, our negative emotions and our positive emotions, but we're talking about the negative here. The negative emotions show up in our body, okay? We need to be able to start realizing those. So when you notice that butterflies in your stomach or the stress or that hot ball of lead in your gut, notice those without judgment. Understand where it's coming from. And then start practicing mindfulness and breath work all the time so that you can use it in those moments. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're looking for. That's what we want. You're going to start seeing all sorts of benefits, short-term and long-term, in yourself and in your athlete. And if some of this sounds good, but you don't really know how to implement it, you don't think you can pull it off with your kid, pull it off with your athletes, coaches, parents, get a hold of me. That's what I'm here for. That's what I do. I do it all the time. I've started working with a lot of athletes and teams and implementing a lot of these techniques that, quite honestly, I would have laughed at when I was an athlete. Nobody was really showing them to me, but I wish I'd have had them now. I see a ton of progress in kids when they start using these. They feel so empowered in being able to change their reactions towards stress. It is extremely empowering to have these tools, know these tools, and be able to use these tools and feel like, hey, I can control these situations. So we go all the way back to episode 1. What's the controllables? Well, your response to stress and anxiety or adversity in your games, in your life, your response is controllable. Mindfulness is a great tool to be able to control that. But if you don't know how to do it, if you don't know the tools, you can't do it. So it's only controllable if you have the tools and the knowledge and the know-how and the practice. And that's what we want you to do. So hopefully you've enjoyed that episode or this episode, and hope you've enjoyed these last 3 on how parents can talk to their kids and help them build that mental toughness. We talked about the power of positive praise, or the power of praising the controllables, the power of a positive voice, and now the power of embodiment and breath work and how important that is. And while I do other things with athletes, different exercises, different things, but this is the main focus of what I'm doing over and over again, is working on these ideas. And if you can help your athlete learn these 3 ideas, they're going to be so much better prepared for their next game, their next season, and for the rest of their life. So best of luck to you, your athlete, your team. Please, if you have questions, reach out to me. I would love to help. I would love to be able to make you even more mentally tough, and just, even if it's not to hire me, just to reach out and ask questions. I'm always here. I love helping athletes, helping teams. So I appreciate you listening. Do me a favor, like, share, subscribe. Please help me get the message out there. I appreciate it. And as always, this has been Coach Thomann on the Mental Mettle Podcast. And always remember, forge your mettle.
Thanks again for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Mettle Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Mettle Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Mettle Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your mettle.